Yeah, so I mean, I just wanted to begin by saying congrats on the film. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
Great, good.
So you've come
Much
from
to owe you for that then.
so you've come from a predominantly music background. So I was just wondering how it was you got into filmmaking, and why it was this particular part of your life that you wanted to share with the world.
Well, at the time I was doing nothing because the band I managed had kind of stopped touring and were recording an album, so I was a bit bored, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So people said write a book, and it's too hard to write a book. And if you go into a bookshop, there's millions of books. So I thought I'd make a film, and I thought what a good place to start would be at the start.
Mm-hmm.
Although, funnily enough, I didn't start at the start. I wrote another film first that I've kind of got on the shelf just now. But then I thought, no, go back to the start, because the start was funny. It was a bit of a laugh, you know. So that's it, really. Just did it then.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, some of the stuff that the characters go through in Schemers is just absolutely wild, and sort of unbelievable at times. I was just wondering if there were any creative liberties that you took when writing the script, if there were any at all.
No, really. No, I mean, like, everything in the movie happened to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the thing with the Jack Vittriano painting was a different story. We just adapted the story, but it did actually happen. I was offered a Jack Vittriano, paint, which is worth millions now, but I never took it. So, like, stuff like that is true. I mean, it's all true, really. The gigs, what happened at the Iron Maiden gig, not having any crew, not having any catering, all that sort of stuff's all true. So there's nothing really made up. There's a lot of stuff that's not in the film that's even worse than that. You know, it was so haphazard it was ridiculous. You know, I mean, really ludicrous that I even went on to do any bands, never mind sort of big bands. You know, and made any money. You know, that's the joke. You know.
Yeah, and of course Conor is absolutely terrific in the film. But was it strange?
He's good.
Yeah, was it strange having to direct someone else how to essentially play you in a film about your life?
No, it's really easy because, like, it's not like you're having to make things up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
See if you're directing like some sci-fi thing or something like that, and you just got to invent the character, what happened, and all that sort of stuff. But it's just a case of going to Conor, saying, "Look, Conor, this is what I would have did. I would have been acting like this. I would have been like that. I would have done this. I would have moved that way. I would have said it like that. That's it." Same with John, like the guy who's playing John. John would have done that. John would have done this. John would have done that. You know. Same with Scot. It's like, oh no, Scot wouldn't have done like that. But Scot used to act like this, and he used to have these mannerisms. And, so when you're just replaying it in your head, it's kind of really easy because you're just like thinking back now. Oh, what actually happened there? Oh, I remember that. Yeah, that was it. You know.
Yeah.
So really, to be honest with you, easy. You know. Yeah. And Conor's such a top guy anyhow. Like, he's such a great guy to work with. You know. It's really funny. He's a good lad.
And so I studied in Dundee for a couple of years when I was at uni.
Oh,
and
did you?
Yeah. So it was kind of surreal seeing it in a feature film, since it's not really a city that people put in movies. So how did it feel, sort of knowing that your film is the first of hopefully many to give the city a voice in Scottish cinema?
It felt great. It felt absolutely brilliant because I love Dundee. You know.
Yeah.
I do genuinely love it. You know. And I'm lucky I've got a good house in Dundee, but I'm hardly ever there because I can never get across now, you know, because I'm in Bangkok. But I really wanted to portray it as quite a nice place, you know, and get as many good shots in, like, you know, the down in Broughty Ferry and, you know, down at Magdalen Green and in a few pubs and kind of gentle humour and, you know, just sort of stuff like that. I mean, I didn't want it to look gritty and industrial and undermined and downtrodden and all that sort of stuff. I wanted it to look quite, a bit a bit kind of rock and roll, a bit edgy, a bit, sort of funny, you know.
Yeah. And I mean, getting Iron Maiden to play Caird Hall must have been just quite unbelievable. I know we see how it came to be in the film, but I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the experience of booking them and putting on that show yourself.
Oh, it's a bit more complicated than it was in the film because basically this guy had bought 3 or 4 Iron Maiden shows because they had the big agent in London. And then there was a guy in Scotland called George Duffin who used to sell on the shows to other promoters. So he sold on the show to this other Scottish guy called Andy Kennedy, who sold the show on to me. So I eventually got this. I got the show Iron Maiden, right? And I'd never really hardly like sort of heard of them, to be honest with you. But he said, "No, it's going to be big. The album's going to do this. It's going to be huge. Blah blah blah." Oh, fine, okay, no bother, So in real life, we actually used. I used my student grant, and my two mates used their gyros.
Okay.
And then we got some, and then we got some money from another guy, the gangster guy, to sort of top up the funds. And in real life, it kind of made money. And but what happened at the end was, we divvied up the money, and I went to the casino, and I lost it all at the casino. So my dad, I went back to the Multis, walked all the way back to Whitfield from the city centre, and my dad says, because I used to share a room with my dad, about 6 inches apart in these little kind of crappy beds, and he went, "How did it go, son? How did it go?" I went, "Sold, made loads. It kind of sold out. Well, never sold out, but it did really well." He went,
Mm-hmm.
"I'm awfully proud of you, son." And I just turned my head to the wall and went, "Oh, I've just lost it all on red at the roulette." And he said he's awfully proud of me. I've lost a lot, So, but for reasons to make the script just the way the script is, we kind of changed the ending.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's what happened in real life.
Yes, it's absolutely crazy, and I love the little U2 joke that you sort of add in there. I was wondering if you actually did pass on U2, or if that was maybe just added for comedic effect, because that must have been gutting if so when they blew up.
No, well, it was actually worse than that. But we had one shoot we shot in May, and then we had to reshoot in January. We dropped a few actors and actresses, and we rewrote loads of scenes. And because of the continuity thing, it's very hard to explain. We couldn't use the original band that I passed on. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, we'll just stick in U2. But the original band I passed on was, I remember George Duffin calling me from Edinburgh. He says, "Dave, I've got this band. They're going to be massive. They're out in New York. They're great. They've got this girl singer. She's really fit. She's fantastic." I said, "Who are they?" He says, "Blondie." I went, "Never heard of them." and in these days, you couldn't just Google in Blondie and go, whoa, smoking, And it was Blondie, special guest, the Ramones. I went, no. I says, "Tell you what, I'll do Susie and the Banshees instead," which was a great gig, right? Mm-hmm. But to this day, I think, Blondie and the Ramones, well, that would have been amazing. Yeah. But because of the continuity, we had to change it to U2, which, but in later years, tenuous, Placebo played 14 shows with them. So there's a tenuous link there. So, so there you go. A little nod to them, a little nod.
And I know you have a few different projects in the pipeline at the moment. As you mentioned there, you obviously wrote a film before Schemers. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about them and which ones maybe you're most excited about.
Well, the next one I'm going to do definitely is the sequel to Schemers, because it's really, really good. It's like me and my mate Scot Young, who's now, he died a few years ago. I don't know if you know about Scot. If you Google him in, you'll see he's the guy that lost £400 million and all came to a sticky end. But so it's about Scot and I when we go to London, and we've got this flat in Hammersmith, well, house actually. 33 Ella Line Road. So he's doing all his stuff, his business, and I'm doing my business. So I come through the ranks of doing all the music promotions, and he does all his stuff. So it's kind of very dark, it's very funny, it's very kind of rock and roll, and it's 1985 to 1990. But I go to London thinking I'm going to take over the world. And I can't, because I've just done Iron Maiden and I've done Simple Minds and Ultravox. So I'll go to London, it'll be easy, no problem. So I go there, and of course, I can't get a job, So it kind of starts when I try to book Bruce Springsteen from a kebab shop in King's Cross. I fax an offer, and I'm signing on the dole, and I've not got any money. And 6 days later, he phones the bedsit I'm in, and there's a message to phone the manager, and I've not got enough 10 pences to phone back. So anyhow, it's all a bit kind of comic, and I end up getting a job in Walthamstow Assembly Hall. Mm-hmm. But I'm doing chicken in a basket stuff. I'm like the sort of compere. Mm-hmm. And I've got Rod Hull and Emu, Keith Harris and Orville the Duck, Little and Large, Cannonball. These are things way before your time. They're kind of variety acts, you would call them, right? And I'm thinking, it's all going wrong. And then I kind of eventually scale up to promoting Nirvana at the end. So it's a kind of sandwich of, I go down, start doing daft things, end up with a huge band, and everything that happens in between's totally mental. So we have a killer soundtrack, and it's going to be awesome. It's called The Hamster Wheel.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds fantastic.
And it's called The Hamster Wheel because Scott gets into his business, and once you get into his business, once you're in it, you can't get off because you're in it, right? And once you get into promoting concerts, your current concert is paying for your next concert. It's, you know, it's just like, it's all revolving. And if you stop the hamster wheel, boom, all the bills went up, bang, 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 bang. You know, and so that's what we did. We stopped promoting gigs after Kurt died. Well, maybe 6 months after Kurt died. Kurt Cobain, that is. And we had like a couple of $100,000 we had to pay in debts. But then we had placebo to manage. So, but we got off the hamster wheel of promoting. Because it's quite funny, because I thought that, like, Nirvana would be my biggest ever band that we promoted. So we might as well stop now. So we stopped, but we still did Rage Against the Machine and Smashing Pumpkins and Foo Fighters and Green Day. But I never really thought Foo Fighters would go on to do Wembley Stadium. And Green Day would go on to do Milton Keynes, like 2 nights, 100,000 people, you know. So I think I probably left a bit early. I should have hung around a bit, you know.
No, that's absolutely crazy.
So it was a bit crazy, yeah.
And with Schemers obviously now out on DVD and digital, what do you hope audiences discovering the film for the first time take away from it?
Well, it's just like, I think it's a kind of feel-good movie, and it's like anybody that's, I mean, this is what some guy in Brazil said to me, actually, who'd reviewed it or something. He said, this kind of film can travel. I says, how's that? He says, because it can apply to 3 guys any place that just want to get out of the schemes or favelas or whatever they call them there, and want to do something different. You know, just try something different. And that's could be Moscow, could be Santiago, could be London, could be, you know, Broughty Ferry, it could be any place, could be Leith, you know. But you just have an idea to do something different. You don't want to be the 9-to-5er. Well, nothing wrong with being 9 to 5, if you can get a job, that is, you know. But I couldn't get a job well, just sort of impossible to employ me. I was a sort of disaster. So you just make up things to do. So we made up all sorts of businesses and did all sorts of stuff. So it's basically, the thing is, if you have a dream, I know it sounds corny, if you have a dream, you can do it. You can give it a go, but at least give it a go. Don't say, it's too difficult. Give it a go. And you can, I mean, I'm the proof of the pudding, really, because, I mean, can't even play any instrument. I don't know hardly anything about music. The only instrument I can play is the paper and comb. Do you know the paper and comb?
No, I don't actually know.
Well, it's a comb with a bit of paper, and you blow into it, and it makes a noise like a kazoo. You know, that's my only musical. Yeah, that's my only musical knowledge. But actually, it works quite well if you just blow it. Do. You can get a tune on it. You know? So anyway. That's it.
Not a problem at all. I mean, I absolutely love the film, and I'm sure anyone checking it out for the first time is going to absolutely love it as well.
Top man. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Good.